Your brain was never designed for this. It evolved to detect local threats, solve immediate problems, and then shut the alarm off. But today, you're exposed to global crises, breaking headlines, and emotional urgency 24 hours a day. No off switch, no resolution. And your nervous system doesn't know the difference between what's happening across the world and what's happening right in front of you. Here's the biological trap nobody warns you about. Every alarming headline quietly activates your fight or flight response. Cortisol goes up, focus goes down, and your mind stays on edge with no clear target. There's nothing to run from, nothing to fix, so the energy turns inward. That's when staying informed starts feeling like anxiety, mental fatigue, and that strange sense of being busy but not moving forward. Psychologists call this headline anxiety, and when it lingers, it becomes global news paralysis. You scroll, you worry, you refresh, and somehow nothing changes. Your goals stall, your discipline weakens, your mental focus fractures. You don't feel lazy, you feel overwhelmed. And the most dangerous part, it all feels normal. So what happens when you step out of that loop for just 7 days? And what it reveals about your mind, your productivity, and how to live better is where this conversation really begins. There's something almost seductive about staying informed. You tell yourself it's responsible, mature, even disciplined. After all, self-development requires awareness, right? But here's the uncomfortable twist. Your brain doesn't always care about awareness. It cares about stimulation. And somewhere along the way, being informed quietly turned into emotional overexposure disguised as productivity. That's where the illusion begins. Most people genuinely believe that the more headlines they consume, the more prepared they are. It feels proactive. It feels like time management done right. But often it's just passive intake with no output. You scroll, you react, you absorb, and then you move on. No action, no agency. Just the subtle anxiety that something is wrong somewhere in the world and somehow you should be doing more. Now here's the part that gets interesting. The brain runs on dopamine, and novelty is its favorite trigger. Every breaking news alert, every urgent headline, every "you won't believe this" update delivers a tiny chemical reward. It tricks you into thinking you're engaged in meaningful activity, but you're not building personal growth. You're reinforcing a loop that confuses stimulation with progress. And slowly, without noticing, you start mistaking consumption for competence. Mental focus fragments, discipline weakens, productivity becomes reactive instead of intentional. You're busy, but not effective, informed, but not empowered. And if that sounds familiar, it's because the illusion doesn't feel dangerous at first. It feels responsible, until you realize what it's quietly costing you. And that's where things start to shift. Here's where the damage stops being abstract and starts becoming personal. Your brain has limited mental bandwidth, and every headline you absorb competes with your real life for attention. When that bandwidth is flooded with distant crises, there's less space left for mental focus, creativity, and clear decision-making. Productivity doesn't disappear dramatically. It erodes quietly, one distracted moment at a time. You start noticing it in subtle ways. Conversations feel shorter. Hobbies feel like effort. Goals you once cared about get postponed with the classic excuse, "I'll get back to this later." But later rarely comes. The mind stays busy processing problems it can't solve while neglecting the ones it actually could. Time management turns reactive, and discipline becomes harder to sustain because your energy is already spent before the day really begins. Relationships pay the price too. When emotional capacity is drained by global chaos, there's less patience, less presence, less depth left for the people right in front of you. You're physically there, but mentally elsewhere, half listening, half scrolling, half concerned about things you can't influence. This is how someone slowly shifts from an active participant in their own life into a passive observer of everything else. And that's the most dangerous transformation of all. When you stop acting locally and start consuming globally, your sense of agency shrinks. Personal growth stalls. Mindset becomes fragile. Life starts feeling like something that happens to you, not something you shape. And once that identity settles in, the next question becomes unavoidable. How do you take control back without disconnecting from reality? That's exactly where the next shift begins. Breaking the cycle doesn't start with willpower. It starts with strategy. Most people think reducing news intake means being ignorant, but that's just another illusion. The real upgrade in mindset comes from selective consumption. High performers don't consume more information, they consume better information. And they do it on purpose. Your mind is an environment, and whatever you feed it shapes your self-development and productivity. A clean information diet begins with curation. Pick 2 or 3 high-quality, trusted sources. Not 10, not 20. Then define when you'll consume them. 15 minutes in the morning, 15 in the evening. No background noise, no endless scrolling. When news becomes intentional instead of ambient, your mental focus starts to stabilize. The brain relaxes because it knows the threat check has a clear start and end. Here's a practical example. Instead of opening news apps first thing in the morning, start your day with something that builds agency. Read 10 pages of a book like Deep Work by Cal Newport or Atomic Habits by James Clear. Write a short plan for the day. Train your body. Then later, check the news once, consciously. This simple shift restores discipline without forcing it. And here's the deeper insight most people miss. Information fasting isn't about avoidance. It's about leadership. You decide what enters your mind. You stop outsourcing your emotional state to algorithms. And once you experience that clarity, something interesting happens. You start asking a different question. Not what's happening out there, but what am I actually responsible for here? That question changes everything. Once information stops flooding your mind, something else becomes visible. How much energy you've been spending on things you can't control. This is where the concept of the circle of influence quietly changes your life. There are global concerns that deserve awareness, yes, but confusing awareness with responsibility is where anxiety takes over. A disciplined mindset knows the difference. Your brain wasn't designed to solve planetary-scale problems every morning before breakfast. It was designed to manage immediate threats, relationships, and decisions. When you constantly focus on global chaos, your nervous system stays on high alert with nowhere to release that energy. But when you consciously redirect attention to what's controllable, health, work, skills, family, local community, mental focus returns naturally. Think about it practically. You may not control geopolitical conflict, but you do control whether you train 3 times a week. You can't fix the economy, but you can sharpen a skill that improves your career and time management. You can't solve every injustice, but you can show up fully for your partner, your kids, or your team. That's not avoidance. That's intelligent self-preservation. And here's the reframe that unlocks personal growth. Focusing on your circle isn't selfish, it's strategic. A regulated mind creates better decisions. Better decisions compound into a better life. When you stabilize your inner world, your outer impact increases, not decreases. And once that sense of agency comes back online, the next step becomes obvious, turning concern into action instead of rumination. Here's where anxiety either continues or transforms. When you feel overwhelmed by global issues, your nervous system is asking for movement, not scrolling, not thinking, movement. The brain calms down when action replaces rumination. That's why micro-actions aren't symbolic. They're neurological tools for restoring mental focus and rebuilding discipline. Instead of absorbing another headline about climate change, reduce your own waste this week. Instead of arguing online about social inequality, volunteer 2 hours at a local shelter. Instead of doom scrolling about economic instability, take a free online course that strengthens your career capital. These aren't grand gestures. They're small, controllable actions that rebuild productivity and personal growth from the inside out. There's something powerful about helping one real person instead of reacting to abstract millions. Bring groceries to an elderly neighbor. Mentor a younger colleague.
Let's
Donate
explore
blood.
this together.
Support a local
I'm
business.
ready to learn.
The brain
Your
registers
insights will
concrete
help us
impact
both
as proof of
grow.
agency. And agency is the antidote to helplessness. The chaos outside may still exist, but your identity shifts from spectator to participant. And here's the ripple effect most people underestimate. Micro-actions compound. When you act locally and consistently, your mindset strengthens. Your time management improves because you're no longer leaking energy into passive worry. You start to remember what it feels like to influence outcomes. And once you taste that momentum again, you begin to realize this isn't just about news consumption. It's about who you're becoming in response to it. When someone consciously changes how they relate to information, something subtle but powerful happens inside. The nervous system relaxes, thoughts slow down, mental focus becomes available again. What once felt like constant background anxiety starts turning into clarity. This is the moment passive stress gives way to active agency, and it feels like getting your life back, piece by piece. The world doesn't suddenly become calm. Bad news doesn't disappear, but it stops dominating the internal landscape. Global chaos moves from the center of attention to the periphery. You're aware, but not hijacked. In psychological terms, this is emotional regulation paired with intentional attention, a foundation for real self-development and sustainable productivity. With that shift, discipline becomes easier. Not because life got simpler, but because your energy is no longer scattered. You sleep better, you listen better, you think before reacting. Time management improves naturally when your mind isn't constantly recovering from emotional overload. You're no longer living in reaction mode. You're choosing where your attention goes. And this is where most people notice the deeper reward. Peace doesn't come from controlling the world, it comes from controlling your response to it. Once you experience that internal stability, you start asking a sharper question. How do you protect this clarity long term, especially in a world designed to steal it? That's where the final layer comes in. Neuroscience has a quiet rule most people never learn. The brain can't tell the difference between local danger and symbolic danger when exposure is constant. Studies on chronic stress show that repeated exposure to threatening information, even when it's not personally relevant, keeps the amygdala activated and suppresses the prefrontal cortex. Translation: your capacity for reasoning, planning, discipline, and mental focus literally goes offline over time. This is why headline anxiety feels exhausting instead of motivating. Research on decision fatigue and attentional depletion shows that when the brain stays in a low-grade fight-or-flight state, it prioritizes short-term comfort over long-term personal growth. That's why people crave distractions, procrastinate, and struggle with productivity after heavy information intake. It's not a character flaw. It's a biological response being exploited. Here's the practical reframe that changes behavior. Treat attention like a recovery system, not an unlimited resource. Just as athletes schedule rest to avoid overtraining, high performers schedule cognitive recovery. That means silence, boredom, single-task focus, a daily walk without headphones, reading long-form books instead of fragmented content. Titles like Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman or Stolen Focus by Johann Hari help retrain sustained attention and improve mindset over time. And here's the final upgrade, the one most people skip. Replace information intake with integration. At the end of the day, ask one simple question: what did I actually apply today? Not what you consumed, not what you reacted to, what you used. This single habit rebuilds agency, strengthens discipline, and restores meaning to learning in a noisy world. Stay quiet, stay sharp, stay in progress. Now comes the part most people avoid: action. Awareness alone won't change your life. Knowing how headline anxiety works won't protect your mindset unless you do something with that knowledge. So here's the real question. What are you going to change after this video ends? Your information diet? Your morning routine? The way you protect your mental focus before the world tries to hijack it again? Self-development only works when it leaves theory and becomes behavior. Think about it honestly. Are your daily habits helping you build clarity, discipline, and productivity, or are they quietly draining your energy while calling it being informed? Because how to live better isn't about knowing more, it's about choosing better. Choosing what enters your mind, choosing where your attention goes, choosing to act locally instead of panicking globally. That's how personal growth stops being motivational talk and starts becoming identity. And before you go, there's one more layer you can't ignore. You might now understand how the news is fragmenting your focus, but many people are still overconfident about their thinking because of the tools they use every day. That's exactly why you should watch the next video on your screen. The digital Dunning-Kruger effect? Is AI making you a fake genius? Because it's not enough to protect your attention, you also need to protect your judgment. If this conversation helped you, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. We're here to upgrade your mind, one idea at a time.